Welcome to the Access Idaho Payment Processing 101 presentation. This is Rich Steckler, Director of Marketing at Access Idaho. During this video, I'll provide a brief overview of Access Idaho, give you important things to consider when it comes to payment processing. I'll cover a host of frequently asked questions and explain what payment card industry compliance is. Access Idaho started in 1999 after winning a competitive bid from the state of Idaho. We started by managing the state's website, but quickly ramped up to building online services to streamline state processes. Since our inception, Access Idaho has launched hundreds of online and over-the-counter services at no cost to government entities or taxpayers. After several contract renewals and another competitive bid process, in 2019, the state issued Access Idaho its current contract, which is good through 2025. The state contract includes a public entity clause, which allows local governments to leverage Access Idaho services at no cost to cities or taxpayers. Access Idaho is headquartered in Boise with a dedicated staff of 13 Idahoans who live, work, and play in the Gem State. And we've been a proud AIC associate member since 2010. As with anything new, the hardest part about electronic payments is knowing where to begin. But don't worry, it's easier than you think. When it comes to payment processing, you first need to determine if you want your city to hold a merchant account, or if it would be more beneficial to use a third-party merchant or vendor. If the city holds a merchant account, the onus is on the city to pay for credit card fees, assume expenses and liabilities associated with maintaining payment card industry compliance, handle chargebacks, pay for any card readers needed, as well as assume counterfeit liability for chipped or EMV credit cards. By using a third-party vendor for payment processing, the city is insulated from most of the liabilities inherent with taking credit and debit cards. In other words, the third-party vendor assumes most of the risks, responsibilities, and costs associated with electronic payments. For example, by using a third-party vendor, the city can pass along the associated convenience or service fees to customers paying electronically. The city can also avoid payment card industry compliance costs and most rules. Reporting-wise, third-party vendors usually offer detailed online real-time transaction and deposit reports for easy reconciling and auditing. They also take care of handling chargebacks, which I'll cover later. Some third-party vendors even provide swipe card readers at no charge. And all assume the counterfeit liability associated with EMV or chipped cards. But choosing a third-party vendor requires the city to think about other considerations. First, support. Is it offered at no charge? Does the third party service what they sell? Or do they farm it out to a call center, which may be located outside the state or country? And are they available for help during business hours in both of Idaho's time zones? Next, how is their contract structured? Is there a minimum contract length, along with transaction minimums and maximums? How easy or difficult is it to cancel or modify the contract? Although cities can pass along the fees to customers by using a third-party vendor, it's important to look at a vendor's overall value, not just their direct and or indirect costs. The last thing you want is to be nickel and dime by added expenses or processes that require extra city resources. Does the vendor require a minimum monthly or annual payment thresholds for their services to remain free to the city? What payment options does each vendor offer? Over-the-counter? Online? Mobile? Does the vendor offer flexible electronic forms with payment processing functionality to replace traditional PDFs and paper invoicing? How many payment options does the vendor offer? Visa? MasterCard? Discover? American Express? Electronic checks? Are the fees fixed or variable? And is there a minimum transaction fee? And, while not mandatory, does the vendor offer ways to take EMV or chipped cards for payments? Which brings us to questions about EMV. Quite simply, EMV stands for EuroPay, MasterCard, and Visa. It's the global standard for credit and debit payment cards based on chip card technology. EMV was implemented to eliminate counterfeit cards for in-person transactions only. It doesn't apply to online transactions at all, nor does it cover stolen or fraudulently used cards. It means that the merchant of record is liable for funds if a chipped card is swiped instead of dipped, and is later determined to be counterfeit. Contrary to popular belief, it is not mandatory to have a chipped card reader. And since the use of counterfeit cards for government transactions is virtually unheard of, the risk of not having chip card readers is extremely low versus the relatively high expense and upkeep of implementing the readers. The type and cost of card readers varies. We at Access Idaho provide traditional, secure swipe card readers at no cost. We do offer chip readers, but at cost, which is currently about $250 per reader. In any event, your city should be able to have the option of swiping chipped cards securely without investing in relatively costly EMV readers. Another component of taking electronic payments is the chargeback. A chargeback is the refund a credit card merchant issues to a customer after the customer successfully disputes a transaction on their credit card statement. The responsibility of chargebacks falls on the merchant of record, which, depending on the arrangement, can be the city or the third-party vendor. The final aspect of processing credit and debit card payments that I'll cover is PCI, which stands for Payment Card Industry. PCI outlines standards to reduce security vulnerabilities and help protect credit card holder data. Whether your city is the merchant of record or not, it still needs to follow PCI guidelines. However, the number of rules, procedures, and liabilities is significantly less if the city uses a third-party vendor. Here are some simple ways to easily comply with PCI standards. First, never store sensitive cardholder data, for example, on computers, paper, emails, text, etc. Next, use a firewall on your network and PCs. Ensure wireless routers are password protected and use encryption. Passwords should be strong, meaning that they are at least 8 characters long, include at least one number or symbol, and do not contain words from any language. It's highly suggested that you change default hardware and software passwords. Most are unsafe. Don't forget to check computers regularly for rogue software and skimming devices. And inspect them visually for any evidence of tampering or modifications. Finally, it's a good idea to create an office culture of protecting cardholder data. For more information about payment processing, feel free to visit accessidaho.org or call Access Idaho at 208-332-0102. Thanks for watching, and I'm available via WOVA to answer any questions you may have.